We are living in a time of great uncertainty. From an incoming economic recession, high inflation rates, lingering pandemic, and continuous ongoing war, we are surrounded by uncertainty all day, every day. Since ancient times, we've always been faced with unpredictable circumstances, and yet over the decades, our brain has learned to adapt and recognize patterns on autopilot. This has become so automatic that now, when faced with uncertainty, our brains are put in states of anxiety, negatively affecting the way we live. Our brains have changed so that we're not meant to deal with ambiguity. In states of high uncertainty, parts of our brain circuitry get skewed, which negatively affects how we make decisions. A brain imaging study shows us that when people look at specific scenes and are unsure of what to pay attention to, the part of the brain known as the medial dorsal thalamus is activated. This is a huge component of understanding uncertainty, as the researchers found that the less guidance the participants had for a given task, in other words more uncertainty, the more active the medial dorsal thalamus became. This region of the brain is important to note as it serves as sort of a crossroads that is made up of cells connecting different regions with one another. The medial dorsal region sends signals to the prefrontal cortex. This is the area where sensory information integrates with things that guide our behavior. In a study conducted by Michael Halassa, the MIT Associate Professor of Brain and Cognitive Sciences, they looked at a group of mice and gave them a set of tasks to execute. In their research, they discovered that when completing a given task, the prefrontal cortex activated every time. Yet it was only when the mice had no idea what to do or how to behave that the medial dorsal thalamus came into the picture. As Michael Halassa, the associate professor, states, one area cares about the content of the message, that's the prefrontal cortex, and the thalamus seems to care about how certain the input is. As mentioned earlier, during the hunter-gatherer period of human civilization, we were faced with unpredictable situations every day. The brain was used to certainty. Yet as civilization developed and got comfortable, our brains have now evolved to become uncertainty averse. Now, even the taste of uncertainty affects our brain badly, as scientists have found that psychological uncertainty can be just as painful as actual physical pain itself. For example, in one study, participants were involved in a simulated game of rewards and punishments. Subjects were told that they would get a 50-50 chance of receiving an electric shock. Researchers found that the participants who anticipated the possibility of such a shock experienced more stress than those who knew with full certainty they'd receive the shock. Dealing with uncertainty can also take up a lot of cerebral energy. In times of uncertainty, our selfish brain demands extra energy from the body. This becomes troublesome if the feeling of uncertainty is not alleviated, as our brains continue to pull for more energy, which in turn will create a sort of energy crisis that burdens the individual. If this goes on for long enough, this consistent load and unmet demand for energy can lead to brain malfunction in the form of impaired memory, reduced performance, and subsequent cardio and cerebral vascular events. As you can see, prolonged uncertainty can be quite detrimental to our brain. It can lead to decreased motivation, concentration, self-control, and a decline in our general well-being. This impairment in working memory can also prevent you from being able to solve problems effectively and sustain any ideas mentally, thus slowing long-term memory recall significantly. Uncertainty doesn't have to be something we are controlled by. Knowing how uncertainty affects our brain and using that knowledge to change the way we think is one of the best ways to overcome the weight of uncertainty. One way to change the way we think is to learn to be more realistically optimistic. Social psychologist Albert Bandura referred to this idea of building a strong sense of self-efficacy, where we stay positively motivated in the face of adversity. Believing in yourself matters. As academic and professor of psychology Gabriel Oettingen notes in her research, mental contrasting urges behavior to be aligned with a goal when expectations are high, while goal-directed behavior is far less when expectations are low. In other words, by practicing realistic optimism, you prepare yourself realistically for when things don't go as expected, while optimism just for the sake of optimism will set you up for failure. Another way to change the way you think is using what psychologists call the Construal level theory, which refers to this idea that the more distant an object or event is from a person, the more abstract the thoughts will be, while the closer it is, the more concretely we'll think about it. Research shows that the level of construal used to think about how our actions has a significant impact on our behavior. What this means in the context of anxiety is that oftentimes the things that we feel we cannot control and are far off in the distance, we may find ourselves at a lower level of construal, thus seeing the object or event as abstract, thereby feeling much more demotivated and lost. Instead, what we need to do is reframe the way we think about things and reach for higher levels of construal, focusing on what matters most in terms of purpose. It's this type of mindset that will help our brains remain resilient in times of uncertainty. We need to be aware of the distance between the thing that we're uncertain about and the present moment. Knowing realistically what we can do to change our situation can help transform the way we think about it, thereby adjusting the way we respond and regulating the emotions and stress that we feel from it. Neuroplasticity is the ability for our brain to change structurally based on positive and/or negative experiences. To learn more about how our brains do this, watch the video on the left and subscribe for more content like this.